hello there.
Hi.
Hi. This is Jessica. I'm Spencer. This is DNF. We talk about F1, and I am sort of thrilled to say we made it. We did it.
We made it. Wait, did the F win?
The F is still one.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. I'm
The F.
glad.
The F is a P1. If that makes any sense, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
F's in the chat for that joke.
We did it. We got through this entire F1 season, our first, and a very a longer season than I think people anticipate because we spaced things out. But man, March to November, that's sizable.
Oof. It was
Absolutely sizable.
It was the longest season in F1 history, Spencer.
Yeah.
And is going to be even longer next season. Actually, that might not be true. Last season might have been, I don't know. I can't remember. But next season is going to be even longer, though, because they're adding races. And so more F1 to look forward to next season, certainly. And this will be our last show, maybe for a few weeks. We'll maybe have some off-season planning things. But before we get to all of that, we should probably talk about the grand finale.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that people got to start on pre-show racing or pre-season racing a good 4 months ahead of time, 5 months ahead of time. That's what this felt like. That's what the Abu Dhabi race felt like, because this just sort of felt like everybody going out, getting a couple of laps.
Yeah.
A couple of interesting things, but when I don't want to say that there wasn't intensity because Charles Leclerc got out of his car after his finish at P2 and said, I had to give 110% intensity. He looked genuinely drained. But when even Mick Schumacher and Nicholas Latifi in his final race as an F1 driver, this turnaround, he when they do a synchronized spin ever so gently into the wall.
I liked it.
But then they continue racing. Like, that to me is indicative of what you say. Well, what was the Abu Dhabi race? You go, practice. It felt like very, very intense practice.
I think the two big storylines going into the race were obviously the second place battle between Perez and Leclerc. And there were a couple other drivers that could have possibly stolen that spot away. But those two seemed like the most likely to get second in the Drivers' Championship. And then Sebastian Vettel's last race in Formula One. He's raced 299. He started 299 races, which seems like, we couldn't have just waited one more, made it a nice round number, but that's fine. Maybe he'll be back next year to fill in for someone. There are obviously hints that maybe he'll return to at some capacity in racing, but maybe not in F1. Who knows? But those were kind of the two main things going into the weekend. I think one of those things ended in a pretty dramatic fashion and the other not so much. So why don't we, I guess, maybe first talk about Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez and that battle. Spencer, what did you think of the way that finished today?
That for all of my just saying that this was casual, I don't think it's casual for the people fighting for second, third, fourth. I think they were gunning and doing actual work there. And to me, this is what I want to see next season, right? Like, this is what I hope to see next season. I hope to see more of this. I hope to see more head-to-head, down the ballot kind of infighting and fighting all the way down. Notice I said infighting because Mercedes is right there, and Red Bull is right there. And apparently, for the moment, the most harmonious among the three major teams is Ferrari, which sounds weird. That's only for the drivers. We'll get to that. There's a little bit of controversy in the garage, or no controversy if you listen to what they say. We have no comment on those things.
All of these teams' PR is tremendous. Like, from Red Bull straight up posting a statement that had a lie in it, an easily disprovable lie in it, to Ferrari. I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Disputing a report that then turned out to be true like 3 days later that everyone was going to find out was true eventually. Yeah, Spencer, the PR machines behind these teams, sometimes I'm like, man, what are we doing, guys? That stuff, it's out there.
What are we doing? We should have those jobs. Like, what are you going to do? I'm just going to lie.
Lie.
Just going to make a crazy half lie and dare you to catch up because we have a race next week and something else will happen and you'll forget I said it.
Exactly. It's like they all have Mike McClintock from Veep running their PR department. Get
just
up on the fly.
Just keep talking. Just keep talking. It's fine. But I did love that. Like in a race where I don't feel like much actually happened, then I do love the idea that Red Bull and Ferrari, with the results decided, were still going at it. Which next year, if we can get that Mercedes and with McLaren nipping at someone's heels, I'm fine with that. Like that to me would be the most compelling season that we've had in terms of a team dynamic in a really long time.
Yeah, I think Red Bull made the last couple of races interesting with the second place debacle because Sergio Perez lost out on second place by 3 points. If he had gotten the spot ahead of Max last weekend, I think he still would have lost second place if the finish had been the exact same this weekend. And obviously, we don't know if they race differently, knowing, you know, he's ahead of Leclerc or not. I don't really, you know, it's butterfly effect, whatever. But he did end up not getting second place, which he was in a good position to get in last week's race coming into this week. So I think he's probably a little bummed out by that, I would say. And that whole ugly situation doesn't look great now that he didn't end up getting it anyways. It wasn't inevitable that he would, even though they have a fast car, because Leclerc has still been in it, despite the fact that, Spencer, I think you and I hypothesized that like Charles Leclerc died a little bit after the French Grand Prix when he let out that scream. Like he's just kind of been really low key since then. Like that, like a demon was expelled from his body and he just kind of like slowly like receded from the public a little bit afterwards. But yeah, he ended up getting second place, which I think is great. I think, you know, if you just look at the first half of the season and you said, okay, but at the end of this year, it's going to be a Red Bull Ferrari 1-2 finish in the Drivers' Championship, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense, actually. I didn't think it would be like this. I didn't think it would be as uncompetitive as it was between the 1 and the 2. But I'm happy for Charles Leclerc because he did have some pretty good races despite the fact that his own team was sabotaging him.
Yeah, about that. So let's go ahead and talk about Mattia Binotto. Mattia, the director at Ferrari. There was a report out that he was going to be replaced by Fred Vasseur. And that was from the Gazzetta dello Sport.
Right. Which, by the way, Spencer, now that like Twitter is, you can pay for a blue check and like, you know, no verified information is fact checkable. Like I saw this on Twitter and I was like, at first it's in Italian.
No idea.
Second, I don't know this newspaper. Third, it's coming from Twitter. I have absolutely no idea what this thing is and if it's reputable or not. But yes, continue. I'm sorry for that interruption.
Yeah, which to follow up on your point, the foreign standards for what is a source and how well sourced it may be are not necessarily the American court-tested 3 sources and the truth. It's not always that. So you'll get a lot of stuff free firing and like, you know, the Gazzetta dello Sport, which might be respected, but still you'll get some stuff that just flies out and you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, which is kind of what a good PR person would say, and shouts out to the good PR people at Ferrari who put
a grain of semolina. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. It's early.
I have no idea what I'm doing. Fred Vasseur, I won't say. He then said this, which, again, fantastic work in public relations and public theater here. Fred Vasseur said, I won't say anything. You'll find out soon enough. That makes it worse.
What? Like, what you would just deny it if it weren't true. Obviously, right? I don't know.
Right? Like, think about any important question you have for anyone in your life, right? Think about like, hey, What did you do with my money? Did you steal it? Right? You don't say, well, you'll find out soon enough. No, you just say no.
The police are questioning me for a crime and asking me if I did it. And I say, well, you'll find out soon enough.
That's a villain answer. That's a super villain answer.
Okay, so as of the publication of this podcast, whenever that will be, do we know if Mattia Binotto is leaving? If this was actually his final race as team principal?
At the moment, this is my favorite my favorite thing. Mattia Binotto, according to Reuters, is relaxed.
Also kind of a weird one.
I wish I had this much money.
I actually don't know what that means. That actually might be a really good thing to say.
It means you're European and you have money. When somebody's like, "Hey, do you know if you're going to be fired?" They're like, "I'm very relaxed right now." So relaxed.
Truly, good for him. Either way, I mean, it's one of those things where like we see it in other sports too, where people see something failing spectacularly to a degree in which you're like, someone has to get fired, right? So it would make sense that you would lose your job over some of the foibles of this past season. I don't know if that means you change your chief strategist or the head of your team or whoever, but it's like fans want to see heads roll when things fail as spectacularly as they have for Ferrari this past entire season. So I guess we'll find out next season and we'll wait and see. But I'm glad he's relaxed. I'm glad that this is a nice, fun, relaxing time for him because,
this is nice because Mattia is just setting the tone for all of us, right? Do you care? You should not. I am relaxed. I am very relaxed. Mattia Binotto approaching being fired with the same attitude that one has of like having a terminal disease. I'm resting comfortably. It's fine.
Yeah.
I am with my family. We will go on holiday.
We're going to go on holiday. I mean, everyone's going on holiday now.
Yeah.
Because the season's over. So, all right. Well, that's it for Ferrari, I guess. Kind of a really meh season. I'm glad they had like one final race where they put things together for Charles Leclerc. But other than that, let me see. Wait, Carlos finished in 5th place behind George Russell. So the final standings for the Drivers' Championship are Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, Russell, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Baby Lando, Esteban Ocon, Fernando Alonso, and Valtteri Bottas at 10th. And then, Daniel Ricciardo at 11th and the rest of the field behind him. So 2 and 5, not bad for Ferrari, but not the championship race season that I think we expected after like 4 races when it looked like Red Bull was the unreliable car and Ferrari was figuring things out pretty quickly.
Figuring out things rapidly. It was wild to me that after a month we thought this they finally did it. They've put it together. And then after 2 months, the thought was there's absolutely no way that this team can make an omelet, much less that like these are drivers who live to be sabotaged by the insane decisions of their managers, which, like for those who work a day folks in the corporate world, relatable. No team more relatable than Ferrari.
Do we think their espresso machine broke or something?
I think that would probably explain a lot of things if they had just been like a little low on caffeine.
Yeah, it would explain why Binotto's so relaxed too, because I definitely don't feel relaxed after I've drinking an espresso, but I'm also, not a real Italian. I'm just an Italian American. So I don't know, Spencer. We should probably talk about Sebastian Vettel. It was his final, air quotes, final, we don't know, race in Formula One. He had a lot of things to say to race control about their strategy. I love him kind of chewing them out over the radio on his final lap of his final F1 race and just being like, hey, I just want everyone to know, like, this isn't my fault. These guys are idiots and they have the strategy completely wrong. I don't even know how they got it this wrong. It doesn't seem possible to get it this wrong. But
my favorite question is always how did we get that wrong? Like, that's the ultimate, like, excuse me, excuse me, guy in the car. How did we get this so wrong? Let's
Right.
bring you in here with me.
Yes. I like the using the we when it's an obvious like you problem. Like, hey, boyfriend, how did we let the kitchen get so messy when it's obviously like he was the one cooking and
Mm-hmm.
made the mess? But you do the we to soften it so it doesn't seem as accusatory, but
Mm-hmm.
reading between the we is the you. Like, how did you fuck this up so bad? And I like when people do that when they're managing up to people that should be doing their jobs correctly. It's a good strategy, good tactic.
I mean, let's also remind everybody that this 35-year-old man with the long hair and the chill attitude and the focus on things that, in his words, are bigger than the sport, was not always that person. I enjoyed seeing a little bit of aggro Sebastian Vettel peek out because this is someone who has been doing this his whole life. I'm pretty sure that he got into a cart when the minute that he could walk.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a dude who is a champion and was an intense competitor before he entered this kind of, grandfatherly, cheerful, generally like very balanced person. This is a luxury. That's a luxury because Sebastian Vettel was not always this dude. He was a hard charger, super intense, and the kind of person who would chew out his crew over the radio. And as we can see, is still kind of that dude.
Yeah, I mean, I liked his post race interview with Jensen Button, where I mean, at first he was like, I have nothing to say, like I'm spent. But then he was like, the last few years have been important for me in realizing that there's things bigger than racing. And he kind of spoke to that, like, I think since 2020, joining Aston Martin, not being on, Ferrari anymore, and COVID and all of these things happening in the world, he like really kind of took that to heart and decided to do more with his career than just be a driver. And that's something that you can only do, I think, when you've had the career he's had and like the respect that he has. He's not racing for his seat every year anymore. Like, he's just able to have fun and like send messages when he wants to, which is a cool place to be. And now he's unfortunately not going to be on the grid anymore, but hopefully we'll still see him around, because I do think he has a really positive impact on the sport in general and what he brings to the table. Speaking of the table, we do need to talk about one of the most important pieces of content to come out of this Grand Prix weekend, which is the all-driver dinner in Abu Dhabi that allegedly Lewis Hamilton set up and hosted and paid for, and according to Martin Brundle during qualifying, paid 140,000 euro for the 20 drivers to eat at this meal. So what were your thoughts when you saw all of the pictures? It reminded me a lot of like the NFL winter meetings where the coaches all like take an awkward photo together. It was a little bit like that because these guys don't like hang out like this, especially not all 20 of them at once without like publicists sitting next to them. So what were your thoughts about that?
That one, it had to be awkward because
Yeah.
because they don't get to do this, and also that these dudes are highly specialized. When you're dealing with extremely specialized people, sometimes you get very awkward results in terms of social skills. That had to be very awkward. I think that once Lewis was paying, I want to know which driver was like, oh, we're getting the steak. We're getting this is Abu
getting all the
Dhabi and
steak.
Lewis is paying. I'm getting the steak that was grown from a cow raised on the moon.
They don't, I don't think many of these drivers drink alcohol, at least not like during like a couple nights before a race.
Yeah.
So for it to be 140,000 euros without like a $20,000 bottle of champagne, that's a lot of money to me.
I think it helps that the one drinker there is probably just sticking to beer. Hi, Daniel.
Yeah.
Ricciardo. Hi. Going.
Okay, that was Spencer. This is my other thing. So F1 posted a seating chart, and Daniel Ricciardo is at the end of the table. To me, he's a middle table seat. Oh, like you have to put him in the middle. You can't put Nicholas Latifi in the middle of the table. It has to be Daniel Ricciardo.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is not what Lewis thought. And that is a curious thing to explore on its own. That Lewis said, basically, he put Daniel Ricciardo as close to the kids' table as he could. There's
That
no
is
kids'
true.
table, but he put him way at the end.
He's next to Zhou Guanyu, Yuki Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly, and Lando Norris. Like
That's the kids' table.
The four other youngest drivers on the grid, I think, other than maybe George Russell and Alex Albon.
That's the kids' quarter.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That's the little containment area.
I think the Max Verstappen side of the table also is interesting because it's Ocon, Lance Stroll, and then the two Haas drivers. Like he sat nowhere near Sergio Perez, who you think, before last weekend, you'd think he'd probably feel the most comfortable sitting by. I don't know. Someone put in the chat, do you think they had assigned seating? That is a great question that I've been thinking about a lot the last few nights. Like, Spencer, you seem to think Lewis Hamilton sat them.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
How coordinated and together is Lewis Hamilton about everything? Look at the man's outfits. Look at the way he conducts his business, and tell me there was not a seating chart. I guarantee you there was a seating chart. And if not an explicit seating chart, then suggestions of, well, why don't you sit here? Why don't you sit here?
Yeah.
Like, and honestly, like, for most people, if you're Yuki Tsunoda and Lewis Hamilton walks up and goes, hey, Yuki, I think you should sit right there. Yuki's probably going to go, it's a good idea, Lewis. I'm going to sit there. I wanted to go through a series of restaurants, by the way, where they could have spent less than, 140,000 euro?
Apparently, yeah, according to Brundle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, a list of restaurants in Abu Dhabi that exist, are real, and are currently open that they could have eaten at. They could have eaten at the Hardee's in Abu Dhabi.
What?
Yes.
I thought you were going to say like Hard Rock Cafe, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. But Hardee's.
They could
like,
have eaten...
look, hold on. Like the chain restaurant that the South Carolina Clemson Trophy used to be modeled after. That Hardee's?
That is correct. And should, by the way, the South Carolina Clemson Trophy, that should still be modeled after a Hardee's.
I mean...
Stay true to your roots.
Fair. I like the new trophy, but go on.
The other place that they could have eaten, there are several other quality options that would have been, I think, much less expensive and easier on the wallet. There is a Popeyes.
Okay.
That has 2.8 stars, which I will say this, it must be good because it only has 2.8 stars.
That reminds me of when I had a French exchange student once, and my sister and I took her to Chipotle, and this was like in 2008 or 9. And we were like, oh, you have to try Chipotle. It's so good. And she left and was like, I do not like this place. It is way too spicy. And we were like, it's literally Chipotle. She could not tolerate the heat. So I don't know if Popeyes would work out for many of the drivers on the grid. It seems like a group with sensitive tummies.
Yuki would dominate it. I feel pretty confident.
Gasly
the man likes
Gasly
snacks.
would be Gasly. Let's put it that way.
He's French. He'd be like, this is so spicy. And you'd be like, that's black pepper. That's black pepper, my dude.
What is all this oil? I want butter on my chicken.
Or they could have gone to Abu Dhabi's hottest chicken finger joint. That's right. Raisin Cane's. They could have gone to Raisin Cane's.
There's a Raisin Cane's in Abu Dhabi?
There is. And there's some nice table seating. They could have just gotten all of the drivers there. I think Lewis probably would have been out like $300 if everyone went super nuts.
Wow. Those are the last 3. I mean, Popeyes, I think I could have guessed. Hardee's and Raisin Cane's, like, those are obscure even among certain groups of Americans, I think.
Yeah.
Like, Hardee's is super regional.
Hardee's is super regional.
Raisin Cane's is super regional to college campuses.
This is me making an argument that Abu Dhabi, it's like a little corner of southern Arkansas.
Wow.
I wanted to ask you, like, if I had to give you the driver, like, people in these end of year shows usually go, oh, well, who was most improved? Who was the, most important driver? I don't know. They got a list for that, man. Look, there's points. Who was the driver that you personally followed this year and thought this was the most compelling story? Like, funny, frustrating, whatever it was. Who was the person that you sort of had to follow every week?
That's a good question. I mean, I think of the better drivers. I've enjoyed watching the best lad George. It was
Mm-hmm.
quite a slip of the tongue. The best lad George Russell. I mean, it was his first year at Mercedes. I kind of was unsure how he would do
Mm-hmm.
with the car being not as good as it really was expected to be to start the year. And he like the first half of the season, he was like steady Eddie, just doing really well. He was very earnest and like also he's kind of funny and charming at the same time. Like we didn't really talk about on this podcast his commentary about the meme with the
Mm-hmm.
looking out the window meme, which like was maybe one of my top 3 favorite F1 things of the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed watching him race. Like I thought he did a really good job. He's definitely not the most like interesting driver, which is why it's a difficult question, I think. Can I flip it back to you and ask you?
Well, this is interesting because I have a similar answer in
Oh.
terms of character because yeah, I think it was fascinating watching George develop, and there were because he went from being someone who I think was confident but pretty sedate in terms of where he was to asserting himself more, both on the track and off the track at Mercedes, getting his first win and saying, hey, this is the first of, the first of many
Mhm.
to come. I think
Mhm.
that's a good look into psychologically where he thinks he belongs. He thinks he should be podium, top 5, ultimately winning championships, which is what Mercedes hired him to do. So like, hey, good on you. This is an amazing development curve. It's been beautiful to see. I even enjoyed when he went dark George, when he
Mhm.
became the most vicious lad.
Went a little crazy for a week, but then he kind of came back.
Got his elbows out,
Yeah,
got his elbows
that's
out.
what they
And
say.
um but that's not the story to me that has been like the one that I keep coming back to. Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc to me is somebody who I had to watch try to like avoid failing. Somebody who
Mhm.
really confronted a failure that he could not control. And that to
Mhm.
me is and how he handled that and how I think he persevered while being put in the most ironic position in F1, which is at the helm of a perfect machine run by deeply imperfect individuals.
Mhm.
That to me was the thing that race after race, when you go, well, what am I watching? I'm like, I don't know if this makes me a bad person, but I'm going to sit here and tune in to see what they do to Charles Leclerc today. Like
Right.
what banana gets put in the tailpipe today.
Yeah, we watched a lot of like Charles Leclerc overcoming things that were out of his control this season, which always makes for a good storyline because it's like the adversity created by his own team members that he still has to rely on to not, do something even worse the following weekend, right? Like you have to
Hmm.
really trust those people and your teammates and the engineers and the strategists every week, even after they've broken your trust
Hmm.
so many times in like these publicly humiliating ways. So I think that that's a great answer without being like sounding too Mercedes Homer. I think Lewis Hamilton, you can kind of talk about him in the same light. Like last year after Abu Dhabi, many people speculated he wouldn't even come back to Formula One. He like took a 3-month social media hiatus, and there was just like so much speculation about how he would rebound mentally from that. And I thought he did. I think over the season, you could kind of see it happen in real time. Like I think he was pretty insecure the first few races, and the car was really bad, and he was working as hard as he could to help them fix it. And finally, like midway through the season, things got better for Mercedes and they did make improvements. And like he had to watch his younger teammate place better than him a lot of weeks in a row. And I'm sure that that was very concerning and made him even more doubtful about his own career. But I think now, like the last couple weeks, he's been way more confident and like, yeah, I'm coming back. I want to win another championship and like I still want to do this. So I think that's been kind of interesting to watch play out too, because he just had such a strange offseason compared to the other drivers who all knew
Yeah.
they were coming into what to expect coming into this season. And I don't there's no one I still don't know what he did between December and March of 2021 and 2022. He was like zero dark 30 or whatever LeBron calls it.
Hmm.
Which is strange when you're an incredibly famous person.
Somebody should see you.
Right.
Like,
Exactly. Like where are the tabloids? Not that I want them to like, I just finished season 5 of The Crown, but you know what I mean.
yeah, I don't, because I don't watch The Crown. Is that the show about the very short British people who
Hmm.
don't have jobs?
No, that's Drive to Survive.
Yes, there's only one of them. Two of them, three of them. I don't know. I'm not going to count British people in F1. If I do, I'm going to be doing this for quite a while. I would also say this, that the driver who I thought had the best year in terms of ending up in a better place, ending up with better expectations, and just having an overall kind of like great reset, readjust, start over. Man, my boy Valtteri.
Yeah.
Valtteri.
He's thriving, man. You see that mustache, right?
Uh-huh.
He's having a transformation. I think you're absolutely right. Like he's not under Lewis Hamilton's shadow anymore. And like granted, I'm sure it's been frustrating with all the retirements and mechanical issues he's had to deal with that. He probably didn't have to deal with as much at Mercedes. Certainly didn't finish on any podiums this season, but I'm with you. It feels like a good place to be racing for a team that isn't going to get as much as attention,
Mm-hmm.
and you could still mountain bike on the weekends with your girlfriend in Colorado and grow a mustache and drink fancy coffee and be rich.
It's very, very good coffee. Yes. As we did with close personal friend of DNF,
Yes.
Valtteri Bottas.
I hope he comes back. I hope he comes back on the off season.
So
We were also working on securing an interview with Daniel Ricciardo, which now he will probably have more free time on his hands, but we will see. The reports are he will be the reserve driver for Red Bull next year, which I think is a PR masterclass by Christian Horner, because it takes so much pressure off of Checo and Max to have a personality like Ricciardo in the garage. At the same time, do we think that Max and Checo will get a little jealous of how much attention will be on their reserve driver next season, and that might rankle them a little bit?
I think for either Max or Checo, they will only mind that if he's literally like, if a photographer is standing in the way of them getting from like, one wrench to another. That's like Max. I think we've seen the deal with Max is that Max is 100% racing, and that he's this automaton who's just, I am doing the GQ shoot. Take picture of me. I am now back in car where I am happy and alive.
I also loved that Christian Horner was doing an interview with Sky today. I was like, well, that boycott really, really showed them. It was like 1 week.
This is like when I say I'm not going to use Twitter. That's a lie.
Right. That's just
a lie.
Wouldn't even pretend to say such a thing, because
I'll be back in 3 minutes.
Yes,
that's an absolute lie.
Literally, I'm on it on 2 devices right now. Just so everyone knows.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to tweet. Yeah, I'm going to read it. That's like Christian Horner. Christian Horner can't pass a mirror without having a discussion. Yeah. All right, that's nah.
Before we sign off, the chat, as always, is open to questions. But Spencer, I wanted to ask if you saw Max Verstappen's interview with Sky before the race, where he said he signed with Red Bull until 2028 because after 2028 he might retire. Was this him like doing an Aaron Donald or like a college football head coach where he's like, yeah, 2028, that's when I want my really big extension. So that's why I didn't sign a longer contract.
I never, in F1, I really don't believe like the longer contract is ever the thing. It's an inherently unstable sport in this sense that if you have 2 drivers on a team, right? If you have 2 drivers on a team, one of them will always be gunning for the other. Like F1 is an illustration of why the Star Wars universe would never work as an organizational thing, because remember the Sith, there's always 2, right? There's the rule of 2. You have the guy who's going to cut your head off, and you have the guy who cuts heads. Like that's it, and that's inherently unstable. So that's a long way of me saying I don't know, man. It to me, like the idea that there is so much money at stake and very few people are ever really secure in anything they do. Like we've even had the discussion this year in theory where you go, hey man, like what's the end game on Lewis Hamilton going to be? That's ridiculous. Like you have to have that discussion, but the sport is so cutthroat and so aggressive that that you take guys like, Sebastian Vettel or Fernando Alonso who are older but still very much capable of doing the job, and you push them down to Aston Martin. That's bonkers.
We also should mention this was Haas's best finish in the constructors standings since like 2018, I want to say, which is to say that they finished third from last in 8th place with 37 points, but they finished above AlphaTauri and Williams. So
Yeah.
shout out Haas, giving me strong 2022 Vanderbilt football vibes this season. No,
Yeah.
no offense to you, Spencer.
Oh, hey, no. That's they had a great game. Good for them. I'm glad someone had a good day.
All right, we have a question from the chat. At the driver dinner, who gave the toast and what did they say?
Well, it wasn't Valtteri because he's Finnish and he's not going to talk if he doesn't have to. That's just not going to happen, man. I think, you know what? I think the guy who gave the toast was Lewis. Lewis seems like a toast guy.
He does. Yeah, he does. He's very soft-spoken, but he also seems like the one to like want to make sure everyone knows how meaningful something is.
Correct.
At all times. I also think Sebastian Vettel probably gave one too.
Oh, absolutely. But like to me, like Lewis is the kind of guy who has been through so much therapy and has so much coaching that he's the kind of person who walks into a room and says, "What's our intent?
Right.
What's our
right?
How meaningful are we going to make this?" So yeah, I absolutely see that.
He tells people how much he appreciates them a lot.
Right. And it's weird. It's a little weird. Like
okay.
Thank you, but that was a little intense, Lewis.
You're right, exactly. Thanks. Oh yeah, I appreciate you too, man.
Yeah, man. I'm
that kind of thing.
I'm just trying to get to the coffee. Yeah. Thanks.
What was the most improved team based on your beginning of the year expectations? I mean, we talked a little bit about it with drivers, not so much in improving, but in like surprising and like interest levels. But I don't know.
All right.
Ferrari, I guess.
It's almost easier. It's almost easier to say who it isn't.
Yeah,
than who
exactly.
It is. I think if you look at I'll say it. Shouts out to Haas gang. Haas.
Yeah. Maybe it's Haas. Maybe it's Haas with 1.5 like good drivers or competent drivers, I should say.
Yeah. Haas. I'll go ahead and
we'll
I'll go ahead and
Haas.
hand it to Gunther. Why my expectations were rock bottom and they exceeded them by
holy shit.
Yeah, they exceeded them by 2 places. So well done. I think that whole mid-rank, like Aston Martin and Alpha, both, I think were far more competitive at times. Like my indication of whether you've exceeded expectations is whether I have to talk about you when I didn't think I was going to have to talk about you.
Yeah.
And at times, both Aston and Alpha, you go, which good, nice job, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Alpine didn't have so many issues, like they had a few mechanical issues, but they also had like driver issues. Like they kept getting in their own way the entire season. I think they still ended up finishing 4th behind Mercedes by edging out McLaren by like 10 points, but they're basically going up against one McLaren driver because Daniel Ricciardo finished out of the points so often that like it wasn't, that was their advantage. It wasn't really because they were doing anything that much better. They just kept getting in their own ways, and McLaren just didn't have a second driver to score very many points. So yeah, I guess like I wouldn't say either of those teams. Maybe Haas is the right answer for that one.
I'm going to take one here. Which race day rules should be changed? Bring back refueling? ? Oh God, no. I don't want fire to be part of this. I really, really don't.
Definitely not. I do have an idea, not for race day, but qualifying, which I'm taking from another podcast, Mixed Apex podcast. They were talking about in I can't remember. It might be an IndyCar. Screw up at if you screw up during qualifying, you get your fastest lap time deleted. So essentially, if you're in first place in qualifying and you crash out, you get your fastest lap time deleted. So it disincentivizes you from doing anything that might cause a crash. So what happened in Monaco with Perez crashing wouldn't happen. There would be a big disincentivization to do anything stupid in qualifying to preserve your fast lap time. That I think would probably be a good one to bring into F1.
I could go with that. I just want to go ahead and say, don't bring back refueling. If you've ever seen a pit crew member on fire, you don't want that.
Yeah, no, anyway. I know I don't want that. I don't even want to pump my own gas, let alone watch people do it going like 100 miles an hour.
Absolutely.
In a pit lane.
Let me put it this way. Do you want to give Ferrari the danger of fire to go with everything else that could go wrong in a Ferrari pit stop? Okay, you're with me. You're on the same page.
Should we do like our favorite fuck up of the year? Mine was when I think it was Sergio Perez drove over the screw gun. That was like my favorite like little like dumb thing of the entire season. Do you have a favorite dumb moment?
I do. It's the pit. Don't pit. Wait, no. Like that's like watching.
Oh, it was so good.
Mm-hmm. Just watching. I think that was the race that broke Leclerc.
Honestly, if it wasn't, and that happened in 2 separate days, like God bless this man. I hope he has a long, restful off season. All of these races like jumbled together in my brain, but yeah, the French Grand Prix. Oof, that was us.
So a couple of other
spicy bouillabaisse.
A couple of other rapid fire ones before we conclude the festivities today and get to the champagne. Let's see. Would either one of you be able to do one lap in an F1 car? I can't fit in one. I can't. I can't. I think like I'm about 235 pounds right now. There's no way I'm getting in that car.
Could I drive an F1 car? No. I was watching Sebastian Vettel do donuts, and I was like, literally, like, if you put me in one of those cars and said do a donut, I would have a absolute like meltdown trying to figure the mechanics of that out. There's no way.
Real quick, Jessica, do you have an Xbox or a PlayStation in your house?
I do have a PlayStation.
Okay, go get the F1 game.
I have it.
Okay.
It's so hard. I can't even play the game.
Put it on max difficulty. You cannot, which is basically a simulator.
Yes.
You cannot get out of the garage.
It's so hard. This game has caused so many arguments in my household because my boyfriend got it like last year, maybe, I don't know. He got it a while ago and he was like really bad at it. And I kept making fun of him for being bad at it. And then he's like, all right, fine, like try. And so I tried it and I was just cursing the entire time. And he was laughing at me, and it's caused a lot of fights. Neither of us has played it in a few months because it's just not a good thing to bring up in this household anymore.
Yeah, no, it's rough. Codemasters makes great games. I love the entire Dirt series. The Rally series is immaculate. Frankly, the F1 game is very accurate according to everyone who's played it, who actually has some racing experience. However, that means it's hard. This is all very, very difficult.
So hard.
Shouts out to even the lowest driver on the totem pole, because following the Brian Scalabrine rule from the NBA, every single one of these people could absolutely waste your ass in a race car. Easily.
Even Nicholas Latifi.
Listen, Latifi, I talked to like Latifi's coach, like his driving coach, and they're like, hey man, Latifi's a great driver. It's just not working.
I just love when it's one of these races where everything's kind of just like happening around him and he's just going really slow in the back of the pack and he's just like I'm just trying to keep my nose out of trouble. Those are my favorite Latifi races. And then he still gets in an incident with Mick Schumacher anyways because he's going too slow, but that's what I would be doing. I would be going as slow as when you get on, when you accidentally merge onto the expressway and you stay in the right lane and just go like 50 until the next exit. Yeah, that's my driving style.
Oh, by the way, I love doing this because they don't think we look in the chat. Remo G0915 is saying like, no man, the biggest drivers don't touch it. Did we say the F1 drivers actually fucking use the F1 game as a simulator? No, we didn't. Absolutely ridiculous. No.
My favorite was a tweet that someone sent us last week about the Max Verstappen, and so I guess we said after the Austin race that like Team Red Bull had no. I guess we were just saying that they're kind of boring. Like both of the drivers are just driving machines, and then a week later, obviously all this shit hit the fan with Red Bull, and some guy called us out, and I was just like, yeah, well, we have new information now, so our opinions have changed.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just happens.
Yeah, that's it. The last question that I would like to address in all of this: which team should get a Kane sponsorship? That's right, the only one with American roots, Haas. Haas.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah,
I was gonna say Kane's like Miami Hurricanes, and then you got to go Williams because they can't score points.
yeah. That I believe brings us to a wrap for a DNF for today. I have really enjoyed this season. I look forward to doing it again. Somebody was like, "Are you guys going to do this again?" Yeah, I mean, yeah, one way or another, we're going to do this again. This was a delight. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming along on this adventure with us. I am Spencer Hall. This has been Jessica Smetana. Where can they find you, by the way, if they want to keep up with you?
On the Twitters, the Lebitard Show, Off the Looking Glass, Golik and Smetty, Jessica_Smetana, or Jessica Smetana on Instagram if Twitter is gone by the time this gets published. Spencer, I've enjoyed doing this with you also this season. We have like a few things potentially in the works for the off season. We really want to do more of those driver interviews. Might be hard now that they're all going to be on like Swiss holiday, but hopefully if you're subscribed to DNF, you'll see it pop up in your feed. So if there's any surprise bonus content between now and March, you will get it, even if it's just Spencer and I reading a Wikipedia page for one of the many F1 scandals in history. That could be fun too.
Yeah, that'll be enjoyable. You can find me at the Channel 6 newsletter, where I do sometimes occasionally write about F1 as well as college football, hangover sandwiches, whatever else you care to read about. We do twice a week with my partner Holly Anderson. Additionally, you can find me on Twitter at EDSBS. You can listen to the Shutdown Fullcast, where we occasionally talk about college football, but mostly about a lot of other garbage. I don't know. I got a college football show too on the SEC Network on Mondays. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. But yeah, follow me on there. I've got a link tree in the description on my Twitter, which is the best way to do this. Don't follow me on Instagram. I only like take pictures of Warhammer shit.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you in the next episode, whenever that is.
All right. Thanks, y'all.